Good evening. The grandson of a convicted murderer from Bournemouth says his family are devastated after hearing his grandfather is being considered for parole. Russell Causley was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of his wife Carol 30 years ago, despite her body never being found. Neil Gillingham says his grandfather must remain in prison until he reveals what he did with her body, as Martin Dowse explains.
Neil Gillingham brings his girlfriend Mel to the only place he has to remember his grandmother, a tree in Bournemouth Gardens planted in her memory. Carol Packman disappeared in 1985 from her family home just a short distance from this spot, which she shared at the time with husband Russell, daughter Samantha, Neil's mother, and Russell's mistress Patricia. Despite her body never being found, Russell Causley was convicted of her murder in 2004 following 2 trials. Neil and his family continue to be haunted by the fact that his grandfathers refused to admit where Carol's remains are, and were horrified to learn that he's to be considered for parole again.
What's difficult about this is a recurring issue, and every year, every 12 months, we have to go through the same process once again, where we have to put our argument across as to why my grandfather shouldn't be released. I think it's very, very clear that, you know, we've suffered now for 32 years as a family. When's this going to stop? This isn't right, and I think that my grandfather, once again, is just playing another game, just to be able to assert his control over us as a family. It's terrible.
Neil and his family are strong supporters of the campaign known as Helen's Law, which calls for legislation meaning convicted murderers won't be considered for parole if they haven't disclosed where their victim's body is. And they're worried that Causley's being considered for release before such a law's been introduced.
There's this massive, misconception out there that killers have to admit and show guilt and remorse to be released from their sentence. That is not correct. Killers have been released in the United Kingdom from their sentence early without admitting ever to the location of the whereabouts of the body. So, my grandfather, and this is a direct plea to him, is that ultimately, we can do a fair trade here. You give us closure, allow us to move on with our lives, you move on with your life, and by all means, I don't care what you do, just let us have closure and move on with this chapter. There is no doubt whatsoever that he is the killer, and he keeps on playing games. He's admitted to the murder, he's retracted that statement. He now says that he's a miscarriage of justice. Make up your mind, Russell, what is it?
Martin Dowse, ITV News, Bournemouth.
In other news, the Air Accident Investigation Branch will release its official report into the Shoreham air crash early next month. 11 local men were killed and 16 others were injured when the vintage jet crashed in August 2015. The findings are likely to have a major impact on future air shows. Councillors in Brighton and Hove will decide tomorrow how to save more than £20 million from its budget. Council tax is likely to rise, as Malcolm Shaw explains.
Services like this skateboard park help to keep young people active, off the streets and out of trouble. It's housed inside the Brighton Youth Centre, one of a range of activities that are run here. But now the centre stands to lose around 25% of its funding as the City Council tries to balance its books.
We've got a history of almost 100 years of delivery, and we want to be open as much as possible. And this cut comes alongside some other funding that's also, funding has got tighter, so it's going to make it difficult for us to provide the variety of programme and the amount of time that we're open.
Across the city, youth services face a total loss of around £700,000. The cuts will threaten the future of 8 charities and groups in the city which make up the Youth Collective. They'll only be able to offer a fraction of the services they do now, unless they can find money from somewhere else. The City Council says it has no choice but to make savings of £21 million from its budget this year as financial support from central government dries up.
The City Council, historically, about a third of its funding has come from government grants, what's called the Revenue Support Grant. It was about £100 million in 2010. By 2019, it will have reduced to nothing.
Youth service budget is incredibly valuable for young people in the city. It's very preventative, so it stops young people getting into trouble. It's preventative with respect to mental health, and it helps keep families together. So in many respects, it actually saves money rather than costs money.
Council tax in the city is set to rise by almost 5% this year, an extra £70 on the average bill. The budget proposals will be thrashed out at a meeting in Hove Town Hall tomorrow. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News.
Meanwhile, people living in Poole will pay almost 5% more in council tax from April. Councillors have agreed a 4.99% rise to help fund adult social care and maintain services. Ferries and trains were cancelled and roads were closed today when a World War II bomb was dredged up in Portsmouth Harbour. People living nearby were told to stay indoors while the device was towed out to sea to be detonated.
The likelihood of an explosion was very low indeed, predominantly because our Royal Navy bomb disposal teams are well trained. They understand the standing operating procedures. They on average, the Royal Navy bomb disposal teams get called out every 18 hours. So this is not new activity. We've been doing this for a long time. They're safe. They understand the risks and they mitigate them very, very well.
A petition has been launched to reinstate non-league goalkeeper Wayne Shaw. He resigned from Sutton United over Piegate, and already more than 5,000 people have signed up. The former Eastleigh goalie resigned last night after the Betting Commission launched an investigation, but his Sutton United manager says Wayne didn't make money from Piegate.
We understand there was 2,000 bets on the bet itself. We're going to be furnished with those names of the people that have bet, and you know, sincerely hope, and I know actually, that none of them will be related to the team or the management, but yeah, it's something which we're going to be investigated on, and as I said, I just hope there's nothing else that's due to come out of this.
Now, it's not exactly beach weather, is it? But our region boasts the best in Britain. Yes, Weymouth was rated top by travellers on TripAdvisor. It also came 9th in the whole of Europe. Others that made the top 10 were Bournemouth and Hengistbury Head in Dorset. Finally tonight, Barry the lamb is not your average sheep. Rejected by his mother at birth, he's been hand-reared in a house full of dogs. And it's had a big impact on his personality, as Emma Wilkinson now explains.
That's it, honey. Good boy. That's it then. In we come.
Meet Barry. He looks like a lamb, sounds like a lamb, but he has a canine alter ego. Since being rejected by his mum 4 weeks ago, he's been hand-reared by rare sheep breeder Emma Childs, and living alongside the family's 6 rescue dogs has had an interesting effect on his behaviour.
Well, he comes when you call him. He comes to his name. He follows me. He'll follow me around the house. If I go upstairs, he'll try and come upstairs because the dogs come upstairs with me. He'll try and climb the stairs. If he has his bottle, he loves his bottle and he wags his tail. And, you know, you see him pawing his bed and before he settles down, that sort of dog trait as well. He's not barking or anything yet, so he hasn't taken that on board.
Barry is a Valais black nose, a rare breed that was only introduced to the UK from the Swiss Alps 3 years ago. At the moment, he's quite content with his current identity, but Emma is trying to integrate him back in with the rest of the flock.
He does actually sleep outside now, and they've accepted him fine, and you know, he sleeps out there, and he'll come in for a bottle, or else I'll take a bottle out there for him, because it's important to get him back out with the flock and being what he is, which is a lamb.
So Barry will soon have to get used to his new home amongst his own kind. But for now at least, he's happy as Larry, snuggled up by the stove in his dog bed. Emma Wilkinson, ITV News, Fordingbridge.
I hope Barry is inside tonight because the weather is not looking good. Here's the details from Lucy Verasamy.
From sleet to the slopes, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
A very good evening to you. Well, brace yourselves. Stormy weather incoming. The latest storm system to be named by the Met Office as Doris, sweeping onto our shores as I speak. We're likely to bear the brunt of its strongest winds through the first half of tomorrow. Those winds likely to peak through much of tomorrow morning and the early stages of tomorrow afternoon. By then, Well, widespread gales. We could well see damaging gusts of wind of 60 miles an hour or so. So the chance of some disruption, as well as some bumpy domestic flights and some choppy ferry crossings as well, I should think. And already really quite blustery out there. A good deal of wet weather around as well. The wind's really picking up as the night wears on. They'll be strengthening through the small hours. Howling winds for some of us could wake some of us up before dawn. And as we go into tomorrow morning, well, those gusty winds whipping through a good deal of wet weather at quite a pace through the morning rush hour. Soaking for some of us, well, it will be short-lived as it's moved through quite quickly, but blown inside out brollies really the order of the day. And temperatures are so much lower than what we've seen of late. They'll be a little more modest than what we've been used to, a much colder feel, but if it's any compensation for this windy weather, well, brighter skies and some sunshine set to return. See you soon.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Terrible forecast, so do take care. And that's all from us. We're back tomorrow morning at 6, but from me and from all of us here on the Late Team tonight, good night.